But I'd like to thank everyone who was able to join us today for our blockchain meetup. And today we have joining us Jon Woodard from Wolfram Blockchain Labs. So he's going to tell us about the work that Wolfram does in this space. And just excited to hear about everything you guys have going on. I did want to do a quick announcement that we have a special event coming up on September 1st that we're co-sponsoring with the Disruption Lab at the Geese College of Business. We are having State Representative Keith Wheeler come speak on campus. He's the author of the Blockchain Technology Act for the state of Illinois. And that's the legislation that was passed and went into effect January 1st of this year that recognizes smart contracts as legally binding in the state of Illinois, and as blockchains as being able to be recognized as admissible in court as, you know, proper evidence and things like that. So it really puts Illinois in an advantageous position for recognizing digital assets as real items in legal code. So we'll be sending out some more information about that here very soon. And that'll be in addition to our sort of regular lineup. But right now we'll move on to our regular presentation. Jon will give us a talk about Wolfram and have some interactive Q&A. And I know that a lot of times people enjoy that the most, getting a chance to talk with the people in the industry. So Jon, thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Okay, and I hope at some point we could also do it in person when conditions are easier. We do have our headquarters right there where you guys are. Unfortunately, basically, no one in the blockchain team is actually in Champaign, just as a testament to how much, or I guess how many remote workers we have within Wolfram Research. So are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that, that's kind of a nice segue to just some general discussion about Wolfram Research. Although here's my Twitter. I encourage you guys, if you like what I say in this talk, to follow me on Twitter. And if you don't like what I say in this talk, follow me on Twitter anyway. And then also the Wolfram Blockchain Labs website is here. You can go to our website and there's lots of information on some of the things I mentioned within this talk as well. Wolfram Research is founded in 1987. It's actually still located in Champaign, Illinois. It's really close to the football stadium. I think it's on Trade Center Drive. I think it may be like 100 as the address on Trade Center Drive. I can't quite remember. We were founded by Stephen Wolfram. He is very much a CEO now. I'm trying to think of the last time I spoke with him. I think it was on maybe Monday. So one of the real cool parts about working at Wolfram Research is you get to interact with Stephen Wolfram quite a bit, and then also Conrad Wolfram, who lives in Oxford, UK. I just got off a call this morning with Conrad. So it's really pretty amazing to have interaction with the CEO and folks who lead large parts of our strategy. Mathematica is our flagship product that's been around since 1988. It's used like everywhere in colleges, universities, in research and development, just across the world. Most universities will have site licenses to Mathematica. They'll also generally have access to Mathematica Online, which is our cloud system for Mathematica. And often they will have access to site licenses of Wolfram Alpha, which Wolfram Alpha is our computational knowledge engine. It powers, it helps to power a lot of virtual assistants that are out there like Apple Siri, and other services as well. I think the most interesting thing recently that our computational intelligence has really been built into is Microsoft Excel, which is pretty cool for us to have essentially the number one programming language slash platform just available that many people have a lot of familiarity with and use to do very simple programming, to be integrated into that. That's a really cool thing for us. The other thing that's quite interesting and useful that I'm actually using right now with this slideshow is our notebooks. And Wolfram notebooks have been in use since 1988. And I think a lot of people are finding them really useful for doing all sorts of projects, whether it's kind of research and development oriented stuff, or like in this case, all the way to writing and business and slides and stuff. So that's something that's really something that I think that has really taken off in, say, the last maybe 5 years, where people have seen like notebooks as really this great development environment for all sorts of tasks. Lastly on this list is Wolfram Blockchain Labs. We were founded really in, I would say, 2018, although we started kind of well before that in terms of being exposed as a company to blockchain and cryptocurrency, and smart contracts, all of these kind of technologies that get folded into blockchain or decentralized tech. And I think that's maybe a good place to stop. And I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about our kind of experience inside of a medium-sized small software company. It's kind of like for us, we saw a lot of developments around Bitcoin in 2013 and 2014. Through us, it came from a lot of demand from users. So on Wolfram Alpha, users were typing in like, what's the price of Bitcoin? And then we also had a lot of enthusiasts within the company that were really interested in Bitcoin and blockchain and wanted to know what we as a company could do about that. So it kind of came in a couple different directions where, we had a lot of users that were very interested and they were coming at it kind of from one side. And then we had folks inside the company who were also really interested. And so what we did is we tried to figure out a way of providing information and tools to users in a way that wouldn't, I guess it's the question that a lot of companies have in a way. It's like you see emerging technology come to the forefront and you're kind of wondering, how do we surface this technology for people who use our tools? But then at the same time, you get a little bit concerned because there's all this unsettled issues. Adam just spoke about, in the announcement section, the laws that have been passed in Illinois. Well, that's, been years and years and years after we integrated some of these things. So it's kind of like, how do we make sure that we're going to integrate something that people are going to use in responsible ways? So that kind of became one of the first kind of questions. And we kind of solved that by first integrating, I think it's called multi-chain, and that's by Coin Sciences. And essentially it's a fork of Bitcoin, but it's a permissioned blockchain. So we integrated that at first because that would give our developers building functions within Wolfram language that would connect to that blockchain, that permissioned blockchain experience in working with blockchains. And it would also give our users experience in using blockchains in a way that was going to be much safer than say if we just integrated Bitcoin right from the start. So that's really what kind of drove the push to then create Wolfram Blockchain Labs as a subsidiary. A lot of other kind of things happened. But that was really how it kind of happened within a kind of medium-sized company. And so that happened in about 2016. And then in about 2017, we started thinking about, okay, well, how do we form a subsidiary around that? So I'll kind of stop there because I've talked a little bit about Wolfram Research. I've talked a little bit about Wolfram Blockchain Labs and some of the other subsidiaries Wolfram Research has, and see if there are any questions kind of specifically about that.
I guess how much does your blockchain technology then build into things like Wolfram Alpha?
Excellent question. I can actually, I will answer that more directly, but I can do that right now and say that we try to use almost every single bit of technology that we've built with Wolfram in some way in WBL, if it is at all possible. So in looking at like smart contracts and the new law in Illinois and how smart contracts are going to be accepted as legal binding contracts. So one of the things with smart contracts that I'm sure most of you guys are well aware is they need information just about the world in general. And it's kind of called the Oracle problem, or using kind of oracles. And it turns out that Wolfram Research founded something as a project in around 2004, which became Wolfram Alpha, that was released in 2009, that went about doing that in the best way possible. And that's rather than just kind of scraping different websites that are out there for potential things that are the answers to queries that they would have, and really looking at that from the perspective of the weight of how the web looks at that page. We actually looked for authoritative content from authoritative sources. So for example, when it comes to like finance, that we work with the same folks who are responsible and provide information to companies that will then trade on that financial information. Or when it comes to sports, the same sort of folks who will provide data to people who are looking at, information for the most valuable sort of usage for gambling or whatever. We will go to authoritative sources for the knowledge that we then make computable within Wolfram Alpha. So this turns out to be the perfect thing for smart contracts. You need information about the world. You need a breadth of information. You need a way to understand the entities that are going to be used within those contracts. Well, it turns out we've been working on this for the past 15 years before these things were really thought of and were going to be used in this area. So that's kind of an example, Adam, of using the technologies and services that we've built within Wolfram Research and kind of repurposing them and turning them toward this new era of decentralized technology and the needs and wants and demands that users have within this new area. Were there any other kind of questions before I go ahead? And I'll come back to in specifically this computational fact kind of area, because that's one of the areas that WBL really focuses on.
Yeah, I guess I would have, this is Todd, I would have a question about that. Maybe you'll come to it later, but do you have plans to make an on-chain oracle like through Chainlink or Band or Pith or one of these other protocols?
Very interesting question. This is my yes, I could answer, but can't answer right now face. If we, what's the best way of saying it?
I get it.
Yes. Yes. We will be able to put these things in and do these ourselves.
Cool.
There are actually providers now who use this. I think it's Provable Things actually uses Wolfram Alpha at present. And plenty of these other services either used us in the past, we are in discussions with them, or they will certainly turn to us again, like in future. Any other questions? Thank you for the question. Any other questions? And we can go back to that part when I talk about computational facts a bit more. Okay, I'm just gonna move ahead here. So this is kind of this logo hero shot that you see in a lot of presentations, I'm sure. We work with a lot of different blockchain and decentralized providers already, and are aggressively working or trying to work with more. So when it comes to the areas that we work on, which I'll kind of highlight next, we try to work in, again, like with every blockchain or decentralized service possible. So the ones that we have integrated already are Arc. I think the name of their ecosystem is Arc Ecosystem. The blockchain is just called Arc, I believe. Bloxburg, which is a science-oriented blockchain done by Max Planck Society. It's worked on by the Max Planck Digital Library as a product there. And they're really trying to focus on being available as a scientific blockchain that would help with data sharing while people are doing projects. And then also trying to kind of almost make folks lab notebooks and other research in kind of process able to share that with other people out there while it's in progress. Cardano blockchain, which we have available as a Packlet right now, and Packlet is just how we update things within Wolfram language. The documentation is not there yet, but that should be out very, very soon, like next week or so soon. Filecoin, which we are working on now, Tezos, which we have available, is out there. There are some other decentralized services that we either work with or have some integration or are working on an integration with. Charity Engine, which has a huge number of distributed computers. I think they have like in the millions, so low million, like a million or so, desktop computers that use their software. Interestingly enough, they've been around since like 2011 as a decentralized service with distributed computing. I think they use I think it's pronounced Boink software. So they're really interesting as a partner. Monax, which actually works on smart contracts and having like a smart contract interface to do all sorts of workflows, like digital signature kind of workflows and the fulfillment of those digital agreements. IPFS, which is another service from Protocol Labs that features decentralized storage. NKN, or New Kind of Network, which they have an awful lot of services that kind of are Web3 oriented services, like connectivity. Then they built things on top of that, like a messaging service, I think a content delivery service, and other tools. Monetha, which they have a couple of different products. They have a product that works on using analytics and machine learning for, I would say, mid to small e-commerce companies. And then they have an identity, decentralized identity service for users as well. And Superworld, which works on, I guess they have their own metaverse is the best way to describe them, but working on NFTs as well. So we do have a number of other companies that we're working with, but things are not public yet, or we have kind of in process. But I'll stop there as well to see if there's any questions about any of the kind of companies that you see here that are mentioned, or any additional questions kind of in that space.
So when you integrate with some of these systems, are you running, I guess, natively on their chains, or are you running on your own permission chain and then allowing an integration so that people who want to connect to your oracles can kind of be able to build a bridge or something to you?
Gotcha. So I'm just going to go ahead, like right to the next slide. Another great question. So I'll just talk about, that integration here to give a little background, and then I can go back to that slide in case anyone has any other questions. But as Adam was kind of leading into, the blockchain integration is really the core of what we do. We actually host nodes from those blockchains in our hosting center, I think, which one of those, I've forgotten, it's about 45 minutes from Champaign, but I can't remember what it's called, what the city is. But what we do, sorry, I should have turned my watch off. What we do is actually host those nodes. We connect to them using our monitoring systems like we would for any other service that we host and provide. And we connect to the APIs that they've already built and use those to build those into Wolfram language. And then we use those Wolfram language functions to build other services on top of that. So going back to your question and trying to answer that there, we host those nodes, and that provides the interactivity from Wolfram language to whatever that blockchain is. So when you're looking at Cardano, for instance, it's that we're hosting Cardano nodes, both mainnet and testnet, connecting the APIs that will allow us the functionality that we need to support our functions with Wolfram language. And we do that. We have our own platform that we've built to ease those connections. So we're always building on the platform that we've built, and then the ongoing services that we have to be able to monitor those nodes and upgrade those nodes and everything else, because that actually takes a lot of effort. It's one of those things that it's going to be interesting to see over time how services and software are developed to make that easier to maintain, because it is a thing all in and of itself. And so then that makes a lot of these other things that we build possible, whether it's the computational facts that we talked about earlier with where we're using, Wolfram Alpha and our Wolfram knowledge base as the repository of information, or analytics, where we do more things kind of on top of the functionality that we built to make analytics possible. So that's kind of a brief overview in order to answer your question, Adam. I'll go back to the previous slide, just to see if there were any other questions to let people ask any other questions that there might be around that. Okay, so I'm just going to move forward. So we talked a little bit about the blockchain integration. And so this is, if you kind of think about the things that WBL does as maybe products or products plus services in a way, we have the blockchain integration, we have computational facts, and Oracle delivery services. We don't like to use, and we've been, if anyone has a kind of an idea of a word to use that's more interesting than like the delivery of facts or something like that, I'd be really glad to hear it. We do not, as a way that's not surprising, there's already a very large company that uses the word Oracle and has trademarks around it. So it's a really unfortunate title that people kind of settled on. So we just talk about it in terms of like thinking about computational facts and thinking about the delivery of those facts to smart contracts. And because that's a little bit broader in a way, because it could be that you're delivering those facts to smart contracts that could be just purely blockchain based, but then it could be in the future, along with, going back to the law that you spoke about, it could be that there are other smart contract kind of methods that actually don't use blockchains. And it's one of those things where we won't necessarily know how that may go in the future. It may be that, there are kind of distributed models for smart contracts. There have been a bunch of different companies to come out with different models like that. I think Ripple had, I can't remember what their platform was called or is called, but it kind of had a more distributed model where smart contracts were run in a more distributed fashion and kind of reported back to a blockchain. I think NEM also had a model like that, where the blockchain features that people had for smart contracts were more that you were almost using an API that interacted with the blockchain to update things, but your smart contract could be in a wide variety of languages and could be run kind of in a different and separate way. So there are lots of different models there beyond like the Ethereum model for smart contracts, where everything is run on the blockchain. So we, at present, we kind of think about it like this. Who knows, as things develop, how that may change. The next area for us that's really this, strong area where we feel like is a strength for us is analytics. Again, because we've done so much with Wolfram language in terms of analytics, that really this is looking at the data that is stored on ledgers. Well, this is something that Wolfram has been doing again for the past 15 years when you look at what we've done with Wolfram Alpha, and make that data computable, and then be able to do all sorts of interesting, cool things with that data. And because our language, Wolfram language, is really cohesive, where you can take the input from one thing as the output from one thing as really the input for another, that makes it so once we've made this data computable from blockchains, it makes it easy to use in other analytics that we have available. So we're working really strongly in this area, and we'll gradually come out with more stuff in the future to show people how to use the analytics and the blockchain data that we have, and to provide more, I think, pre-computed analytics as well. So that's this other area that we work in. And then lastly, in education, where Wolfram has done a lot in general with STEM-oriented education, and now even outside of STEM, using kind of Wolfram Alpha as a way to push into those areas. We're doing the same with blockchain, where we've made a number of videos and are making a course in blockchain as well, using Wolfram language and our blockchain oriented tools and things that we've done in other areas like economics. We're also building information and workshops with newer area. Well, I shouldn't really say newer areas. I think they're areas where people have become like way more interested, like non-fungible tokens and making their own NFTs. So we've done some really interesting stuff there, and we've done workshops and exercises already in that area. And I think we're going to see a lot of universities, blockchain clubs and meetups and other stuff call us in to do just NFT workshops, because we do have some great tools there. So that's kind of this blockchain education area. Again, I'll stop here to see if there are any other questions here. If you have, or you're working on a question, it's something where we can take it at the end as well.
Yeah, I have a question here. I just want to make sure I kind of understand, where Wolfram fits into sort of the whole blockchain ecosystem. It sounds to me like it's going to be sort of an API server on top of different blockchain services that allow you to either write smart contracts or search or perform analyses of smart contracts. Is that kind of the essence of what you're working on?
So I would say that we are like an ecosystem collaborator. I think that's like how we would like to think about ourselves, in that we don't run, our own blockchain, but we provide ecosystem tools for, to just jump back here, a lot of these blockchains or decentralized services that you see here. So like when it comes to Bloxburg, for instance, that we have a certify and verify, we have certify and verify functions that help folks within Max Planck that use Wolfram notebooks to do a lot of research, that they can store either they can hash and store that hash of the work or files or even full notebooks that they've been working on onto the Bloxburg blockchain, so that they can later on say, at this date, I was working on this data, or this particular notebook full of code or information or other stuff, to come back and, like, when they're writing things up, have proof of the integrity of their research process. So that's kind of one example of this ecosystem kind of work, where we've built something on top of our read and write integrations of the blockchain integration. And I'm sorry, I really didn't do a good job of explaining that part. But these tools are both to read transactions from blockchains and then also be able to write transactions to blockchains as well. So you can think about this in a way as almost everything that you see within a blockchain explorer, you can do with our read functionality. And then we have writing functionality where we can also write transactions programmatically through a notebook to any of the blockchains that we support.
That clears things up a lot for me. I come from sort of the medical space, and I could imagine something like that being used to track code and quality in sort of medical device development or drug development, where sort of traditional approaches are, we've settled on using version control, Git or something like that, but that's not ideal for tracking R&D and quality over time. So I could imagine using this as a way to track that, and then provide that to regulatory bodies to say, hey, this is certified, it's not, it hasn't been tampered with, and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, I'd go back to what Adam talked about with the Illinois, the law that was passed. So that's an example of that kind of notary usage, where, a blockchain is going to be untampered with. And when you look at notary services, a notary service in comparison to a blockchain, which would I go with? I'm going with a blockchain every day. Because who knows, if you go into a notary, you are trusting that notary provider only, right? Whereas with a blockchain, the larger the blockchain, the harder it is for someone to tamper with that. So if you're looking at, one of the larger blockchains that's out there, like Ethereum, for instance, or in this case, Bloxburg, because Bloxburg only has validators that they've approved, and those validators are actually educational institutions or research institutions like Max Planck, or like University of Zurich, or I think Carnegie Mellon also runs a node. So those institutions are kind of leading that trust. I would tend to trust something like that more than an individual who pays a fee to be a notary and maybe signs a document or something else like that. That's just speaking for me. But so like those notary services and being able to use them in a programmatic fashion is really super interesting and useful. And then when you combine that with other decentralized services that we support, like IPFS, and in the future we'll also support Filecoin, you can combine programmatically and use it to store all sorts of things, and then have functions that can verify that pretty easily for people. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the blockchain integration again to make a little bit more sense of that. I apologize for not kind of doing a good job there. Are there any other questions about these kind of areas that we work on? I'll have, I think the next few things, I'll talk a little bit more about kind of the things that we built on top of these. And I think there's another slide that kind of talks more about computational facts. Okay, I will move forward. So computational facts, and this really in many ways is a lot about Wolfram Alpha as a service. I mean, I'm taking this graphic that's about Wolfram Alpha. I'm going to talk about this kind of in parts to just highlight the pieces of Wolfram Alpha that we use within our computational fact framework. So one of the things that's important when it comes to thinking about, smart contracts and using computational facts is, how can I describe what it is I need in this smart contract? And so we leverage what's been done with Wolfram Alpha in terms of having a natural language question and answer format, because it's natural and it's easier. People don't have to know Wolfram language to have access to the underlying facts that they'd want to use. They can just come to our services and think about it much more broadly. And the way Wolfram Alpha actually does that is by taking those natural language questions and parses them with our linguistics and turns that into a Wolfram language function. In this case, we talk about this symbolic representation, but that symbolic representation is really just Wolfram language. And we access that information in that Wolfram language function and line of code. The data that we have comes from a bunch of different sources where, again, we started this in 2004, pushing toward this idea of making a service like Wolfram Alpha by taking authoritative content and making that content computable so that computers would be able to understand that using the metadata that we've added on top. And that's a really different way of looking at, especially if you look back in 2004, when people were just thinking about, scraping the web for information. It's a really different way of looking at things. And because we looked at it in that way, it's now really the perfect thing for providing computational facts for smart contracts. So included in that knowledge are also a lot of algorithms. And we started with that sort of curation and collection when Mathematica was started in 1987. So that's been going all the way through. And then the other thing is just all sorts of other data sources that go into that. And having the structure to have really a definitive answer. Again, this is precisely what you need. And Like if you look at this graphic is actually from 2011 when we're talking about Wolfram Alpha and comparing Wolfram Alpha to IBM's Watson, but it's still incredibly useful today and useful to think about the process that we've used and why it's the perfect thing for smart contracts. So I will stop here and see if anyone has any questions with this part as well.
Yeah. So obviously one of the sort of, I guess, founding ideas or concerns behind blockchain systems is the idea of privacy. And short of just sort of maybe not knowing who is running a smart contract, have you guys given any thought to how this process could use, I don't know whether it be part of a cryptographic hash or anything else of blinding informations to keep sort of knowledge leakage of what information is being accessed and maybe just sort of keep people out of your business if you want to look something up that you don't want the whole world to know that you're looking up?
So when it comes to like Wolfram Alpha, if people are going in and just looking Wolfram Alpha, we actually don't have advertising on Wolfram Alpha. It's supported by the integrations that we do with folks like, you know, Microsoft and others, and then our pro functionality. So in terms of people using Wolfram Alpha, we do like, you know, monitor IPs and other stuff, but that's about abuse, not about who's using things for what, because we don't really have the incentive to do that because we're not serving up ads against people. In terms of use on blockchains and smart contracts, haven't thought about that as much there because, you know, once contracts are using different pieces of data, it depends on the model of the blockchain, less on what we would be doing. Does that kind of make sense? That's the best I can answer.
Absolutely. And I think that this might be one of those questions where I was just sort of, I don't know, thinking outside the box and it doesn't really have an answer.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think it's more like when I think about it, and again, I'm not, you know, I'm not an engineer in this way. I'm like my engineering, which I didn't talk about my background, but it's totally different and not as useful. So when I would think about something like this, I think it's a really interesting question, but it has more to do with the blockchain setup and how they perceive oracles interacting with their smart contracts and how their smart contracts are set up and how easy it is to de-anonymize smart contracts on their blockchain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so talked about Wolfram Alpha. So that's kind of an example. And with our computational facts in working with blockchains, we actually build that on top of the blockchain integration that we do. So just a little bit about analytics, and we're going like longer than I thought here. So I'm going to try to speed up a little bit. We have some great articles that we've written in blog posts that talk about where we use our own analytics to solve or look at different questions. One of those is this curious Ethereum transaction that had 2.6 million in fees, which is just crazy in terms of having a fee that someone added to a transaction. So the question around this was like why they might have done that, and just looking at other information around it. So that's kind of one thing. And it's kind of an interesting thing in terms of analytics. We've also done things around like more forensics kind of standpoint. So this is kind of one type of forensics. Another type is looking at the dark side group and how they used Bitcoin and how people kind of traced them and their UTXOs to kind of highlight the interactions and what they did with the Bitcoin that potentially made it easier for the U.S. government to track them down and reclaim some of the things. I mean, it could have been that they could, lots of things could have happened with that. But that blog post explores that. So we have a lot of those blog posts, and this where we're working with analytics, we're doing more and more in this direction of how to use these analytics that we've made, these functions that we've made that access the transactions on these different ledgers to be able to do analytics and explorations with other features of Wolfram language. So that's this kind of stuff. Okay, and so to wrap up, I'll talk about kind of these new areas that we're working on. So NFTs have become tremendously popular, and we have a service. We've built in functions. Well, we've added functions to our repository to help you mint NFTs. And there's actually a function called Mint NFT in our Wolfram repository. And then we built a service, live minting, that uses that service and other things that we've built toward NFTs. And this is just this idea, and you can go to live minting, it's at liveminting.com, and kind of see the direction that we're headed in. And then we have an archived event with Stephen that should be linked there, where Stephen and a panel not only went through a bunch of different CA figures to find like some candidates and select them, but we also named them and minted them. So that was a really cool thing. And that's something that I think a lot of people are very much interested, not only people who are big on blockchain and crypto, but then people in general are really interested in NFTs, especially about using, I think, NFTs to store moments in perpetuity in a way that they have the ability to access them in the future, the ability to share them with family, friends, and associates, and can do that in a way that's outside of kind of these big kind of tech systems. So that's what we're pushing forward with live minting as a service. And you can see that at liveminting.com. It has kind of an explanation of the things that we're trying to do, as well as links to our functionality that we've made available for the public to use. And this is something where we anticipate doing a lot more workshops on using NFTs to folks, because I think it's one of those areas where family, neighbors, friends, teachers, people that we want to evangelize to about blockchain and other services can instantly sort of grasp what to do and how it might be useful for them. And I found that to be a really cool and interesting thing in the future. And it's a way that they can interact with blockchain and smart contracts without having to speculate on crypto. And I think that's really important and really an interesting thing. This is just about the Mint NFT function and how we're kind of expanding that. So I'll stop here as well to see if anyone had any questions about what we're doing with smart contracts and NFTs and stuff. Okay, this I think is the last slide, which is just, the Q&A sort of slide. Just to see if there are any other questions about any of the stuff that I've brought up today, or want any to provide me with any sort of feedback in general, or any other, questions about what I may have run into in kind of the decentralized space as a whole. Okay, great. I will stop sharing from that point. And Adam, I think I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for a really interesting presentation. You guys have a lot of awesome stuff going on. I don't really have a lot of other questions. You provided us a lot of great data points there in the talk. Did anybody else have anything you wanted to bring up as part of the meeting? Matt?
I have one real quick question. So John, the end goal, the end state you're probably looking for Wolfram to be involved in is basically to be the data engine behind all of the smart contracts that reference market data or scientific facts or other facts that need an undisputable source. Is that kind of what we're hearing here?
So I would say there's like, there are 4 key areas that we kind of work on. And this is something too, our website kind of, it's a little bit dated explanation of these areas. But we try to, 1, integrate with every single blockchain that we can. Like right now, I think we're at like, we're getting close to like 10, which is just one of those numbers that I have in high esteem as like a double-digit number. But we're trying to integrate with every single blockchain that we can that's out there that seems reasonable and interesting to be able to do. And that allows people to both read data on those ledgers. So we make that data computable as much as we can from those ledgers and write transactions using Wolfram language to those blockchains. And then we can build services on top of those functions that we built. Like Mint NFT is a good example of that, where because we support all of these transactions for all of these blockchains in a very unified way, it makes it way easier to then build a unified function that makes it easy for people to mint NFTs on a transaction across these different blockchains. So that's kind of what we're doing in that kind of area of blockchain integration. Then the area that you hit on about computational facts, absolutely. There, we're really kind of building on what we've done with Wolfram Alpha to be able to provide computational facts to smart contracts, again, on any of these blockchains that we support. That's what we're trying to build toward. The thing where I would sigh and pause is that, of course, that takes a tremendous amount of work and resources to try to do that and try to do it in this kind of unified fashion that makes it easy for people when they're using Wolfram language tools to do it kind of in this unified and predictable way. So that's what we're trying to do. With analytics, it's the exact kind of same thing, same theme. That again, we have unified functions to be able to read information from these blockchains where we've made things computable. And what we're trying to do going forward is build analytics and metrics and forecasting based on that information to provide to people who will then use those functions. And again, make it uniform and easy to use. So if I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, say, an academic researcher who's looking at how people do these transactions and the type of people who do transactions on a blockchain, I can use the Wolfram language functions and don't have to learn new things to interact with the different blockchains that I may want to pull data from and build analytics about.
So you would be able to see, basically using Wolfram language, how many smart contracts reference the price of oil, or how many smart contracts reference the number of people in a certain location, that kind of
yeah,
thing.
that's where we're absolutely trying to go toward. We don't have support for smart contracts, like general smart contracts, like what you're suggesting right now, but we do have support for smart contracts like in standards that people use, like tokens, for example. And so whether it's a fungible token or a non-fungible token, we can access that and provide information about that very easily, and we already have that built in. When it comes to, you know, those bespoke tokens, not tokens, but bespoke smart contracts that people are building and using, that's going to take more work to do that. We have internal reports where we look at things like that, but we don't have like functions where we have that available yet.
Very, very cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then so the last thing is education, which again, we just build education, documentation, videos, do workshops, do talks like this to meetups and other stuff, where we're essentially not only trying to evangelize Wolfram language and our technologies, but then also just decentralized technologies in general, in terms of answering questions or taking in feedback and using that to, like, you know, either build new products or do a better job of explaining what we do.
All right. Well, we're at the end of the hour. So seems like we've gotten through most of the questions. Jon, thank you so much. I see some chat comments coming in thanking you. This has been a very informative presentation. And yeah, we definitely hope that next time you're in Champaign, visiting headquarters, that you can stop by and visit us again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be great to, you know, do a workshop around NFTs, or another workshop where we're actually walking you through the language and other stuff. I'm probably not the person to do that sort of thing. But I think that's something that we can figure out another time.
Yeah, well, we can still have you over and grab a beer at one of the establishments right there by your Wolfram building then.
Right, absolutely.
All right. Hey, everyone, thanks for coming. It's been a great meetup. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or get on Twitter, follow Jon, send him good feedback, send him bad feedback. Doesn't matter what kind of feedback you send him, the algorithm likes it both ways. So
right, either have it be really good or really bad.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.